Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr.Lamba's Awakening Call. We witnessed diplomatic jujitsu WHO meeting on Monday. India had become the chair of the governing board and Trump had very clearly dictated that he would even leave WHO in case inquiries are not conducted into pandemic and its not reformed. A resolution was presented. There was threat of trade sanctions from China, especially against Australia. But Australia moved ahead and ultimately working with the United Nations group of European Union, the World Health Assembly, which brings the ministers from all the member states of the WHO, met and unanimously approved a resolution that seeks a probe into the origin of coronavirus and the role of WHO. This is a huge setback for Beijing. And as I said earlier, as India takes leadership position at WHO this week, international attention was riveted on the question. And the question related to the origin inquiry, origin of coronavirus, where it originated, who is responsible, fixing the responsibility, and how did WHO become a legatee of China. As a matter of fact, the first call for inquiry into this horrible pandemic was by none other than Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison. Beijing's reaction was visceral. They issued open threats of trade sanctions, but thanks to the grit that Scott Morrison had, he continued and ultimately combined hands with the European Union. The first multilateral decision, was based on discussion of the issues raised by the coronavirus. And it was first discussed in Security Council and G20 formed in the last few weeks. But those discussions were very polite and very primitive. And WHO, World Health Association, has 194 members. And this is an assembly which basically lays down the principles and the guidelines for WHO. So the entire international community has a voice in addressing the key issues of the coronavirus. Because each country is affected. Apart from conducting a scientific, in-depth investigation into the origin of virus, the resolution also calls for an impartial, independent, and comprehensive evaluation of the international response. If I go by the media reports on Monday itself, the resolution was getting 2/3 of the votes from WHO. That's 2/3 of 194, 75, 66%. But then ultimately, it was approved unanimously. The resolution doesn't mention China by name because that would have caused a feeling that they had prejudged the issue and there is no prejudging, it's an inquiry. If China is guilty, it should be held to be responsible. If WHO is guilty, it should be reformed. But there is no doubt that Australia and European Union hope that China would not oppose it, and China did not oppose the resolution. As a matter of fact, they also persuaded Washington, which wanted very tough language, and Washington obliged, they did not include our tough language, and endorsed the resolution. Whatever the fate of the resolution, the wide-ranging sporting cause, against the vocal Chinese opposition is impressive. So that shows that the myth that China is going to replace USA as a world leader has been found to be wanting. To be sure, the resolution was watered down to get the maximum backing at WHO, but it's still big enough, strong enough to have strong teeth to bite deep into the issue raised by the coronavirus. A few weeks back, China and the Director General of WHO, Dr. Tedros, had full control over corona narrative and the issues involved. They were thinking that whatever they say would be accepted as gospel truth. The Trump administration aggressive questioning of China's role for spreading the virus and accusation that the WHO Director General was complicit in keeping the world in dark has not gone down well. But it raised the hackles all over. And then the threat to cut off funding of WHO was the final straw. A country which finances $400 million a year out of $600 million cannot be taken lightly. Within USA, of course, the Democrats and the foreign policy establishment attacked Trump. They said that Trump is trying to divert attention away from his failure by putting the blame on China and WHO. China's success, at least post-success, in getting away and getting things under control at home, and its great diplomatic skill, I'll call it a mask diplomacy, was considered to give China a strong hand, an upper hand of WHO. And the growing cloud in the developing world, bilateral agreements with Africa and Pakistan appear to ensure that there will not be a serious international question. Those hopes are dashed. And as a matter of fact, Africa was very vocal. They were suffering much more. Unfortunately, what has happened is that the death toll in Africa has not been brought to the fore. The whole attention has been focused on Europe. And that is a problem. As far as the whole thing is concerned, I can tell you that if the public pressure from USO concentrated minds at WHO, some quiet diplomacy by middle powers, and that includes India, created a political base for learning the right lesson from pandemic and preventing similar eruptions in the future. Some observers see unanimous approval of the resolution as a huge diplomatic setback for Beijing. Limiting the demand for an external inquiry has been a major political priority for Beijing. There are similar demands at home for an investigation of the crisis because China suffered a huge loss of life and Chinese people want to punish the person who was responsible. The leadership in China is not comfortable with such demand. And this resolution passed at WHO is likely to give a fillip, give a score to those demands. Beyond the immediate debates, now countries like India and Quad, that means Japan, Australia, Israel, must look at the deeper issues that trouble WHO. First is the need to develop new international norms. They are not there. And these norms will increase the obligation of the states and powers of WHO in facilitating early detection and notification. Here there was only detection, but there was no notification. This would also involve finding ways to bring the contested notions of state sovereignty and collective security. Now let's be very clear that the concept of state sovereignty as far as the pandemics are concerned should not be valid. If the people of the epidemic, which starts in one country, spreads to other countries because of the globalization, because of the increased travel, because of the factors on which human beings have no control, then it's no longer a concern of that state only. It becomes an international issue. As I always say, you have the freedom to move your arms, as long as they don't punch my nose. But this action of China has punched the nose of whole universe. Second is a question of funding. If you have a club that depends on donations rather than membership fees, donors will inevitably set the agenda. And USA sets the agenda. Over the decades, WHO has become more reliant on voluntary contributions from governments and corporations. And the biggest are the governments, USA, and the private sector, Bill Gates. So this is going to leave WHO rather vulnerable to pressure, and that must not happen. Now, there's a responsibility on India. It asks if WHO is trying to do too many things. The initial success came when it focused on few objectives like combating malaria, elimination of smallpox. These are major achievements of WHO. But a limited agenda also would enable WHO to be a more effective organization. Now, Delhi, as a chair of the board, needs widespread support for resolution of its vindication of the early call for transparency and accountability in response to China's opposition at WHO. India knows there's one thing to pass a resolution, and it is quite another thing to compel an obdurate, obstinate country like China to comply. What is the benefit of an investigation if China is not going to cooperate? They might say, okay, you are welcome. As happened in the case of the foreign media, they were not allowed to go to Yuan. And when ultimately they went to Yuan, they were not allowed to meet people. So here India, as the chair, would have to play a very skillful game, making China agree to let the Inquiry Commission full freedom to do the detailed, in-depth, comprehensive investigation. Any current effort to understand the origin and spread of COVID-19 virus and the need of a long-term strategy to deal with future pandemics must necessarily involve more than a measure of Chinese cooperation. It needs a sustained engagement with China. Let's not forget the last 3 pandemics have been traced back to China, whether it was H1N1, whether it was SARS, and now coronavirus. So, it's important for Delhi to have a deeper cooperation with Washington, with European Union, and with Quad Plus nations as well, and more intense engagement with non-aligned nations in promoting a new regime for preventing and managing pandemics. That's $1 million question now. The inquiry into coronavirus pandemic is not for fixing blame only. It is also to lay down the guidelines for preventing, forestalling the damage done by the future pandemic. And let me tell you, this is not the last pandemic. As a matter of fact, you're going to see, according to the researchers, at least 3 more pandemics in the next 2 to 3 years. And if those pandemics keep on coming, look at the colossal waste of human life and the damage to the economy. So this diplomatic jujitsu, as they call it, the slanging match, is in fact the beginning of a new world order, a new political system, a new look at the world political system where sovereignty of the countries would have to be limited so that the humanity lives. That's the most important issue today. And let's hope that this investigation lays the foundation for the new political order. And I will not call it a political order, I will call it a socio-economic political order.